I found my elderly parents shivering from the cold on the doorstep of my own house, while my in-laws celebrated inside as if they owned the place. What I did next completely destroyed their lives. My name is Diana, I'm 35 years old, and until recently, I thought my life was going well. I had been married to Felipe for 7 years. I had a decent job as a graphic designer, and we had just bought the house we always wanted. It was a 2-story house with a garden where I planned to plant flowers and a porch for drinking coffee on the weekends. But that night, the night of the housewarming party, everything fell apart. Not just my trust in my husband and his parents, but my very idea of what family meant. It was a cold Friday in autumn. The house was ready for the housewarming party. Felipe and I had saved for years to buy it, and we wanted to celebrate with friends and family. My parents, both in their 70s, were thrilled. My father, who had heart surgery 3 months ago, talked about helping me with the garden. My mother, with arthritis that barely let her walk, was already imagining where we would put the table for Christmas. Those things made me happy, even if they were small details. My in-laws, Sonia and Raul, were also coming. They were always complicated. Sonia is one of those people who speaks loudly and always wants to control everything. Raul is quieter, but he always agrees with her. I never got along badly with them, but sometimes I felt they looked at me as if I wasn't good enough for Felipe. He would say they just wanted the best for us, so I let it go. Days before the party, Sonia offered to help me with the preparations. I was swamped with work, so I accepted. I told her I wanted something simple, homemade food, quiet music, a comfortable atmosphere. She nodded, but now that I think about it, she always dodged my questions about the details. Felipe was acting strange too, always busy, telling me to trust his mother. I didn't think much of it. On the day of the party, I came home after running an errand and didn't recognize the place. There were bright lights, a tent in the garden, waiters with champagne glasses, and loud electronic music blasting. This was not the party we had planned. The guests weren't our friends, but a crowd of strangers dressed as if they were at a gala. I felt out of place in my own home. I looked for Felipe and found him laughing with some guys in suits, a drink in his hand. I asked him what was going on, trying not to sound annoyed. Mom wanted to do something special, Diana. Relax, it's incredible, he said. I wasn't convinced, but I tried to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. I tried to mingle with the guests, but hardly anyone knew me. They were friends of Sonia and Raul, business people, not our people. My friend Carla grabbed my arm and said, Diana, this doesn't feel like your party. Where are your parents? That hit me hard. I hadn't seen my parents. I went out to the porch, thinking maybe they were just arriving. The cold chilled me to the bone, and then I saw them. My parents were at the front door, shivering. My father, in a thin jacket, was pale, with one hand on his chest. My mother, leaning on her cane, could barely stand. They were trying to ring the doorbell, but no one was opening the door. I ran to them, taking off my coat to put it on my mother. What are you doing out here? I asked, almost shouting. The key doesn't work, my father said in a weak voice. I tried my key, and it didn't work. The locks had been changed. My parents, elderly and sick, were trapped outside while inside, my in-laws celebrated as if the house were theirs. I took them to the car to get warm. My mother was crying silently, and my father barely spoke. We didn't want to bother you, she said. We just wanted to be with you. I felt a rage burning inside me, not just for the cold they endured, but for the humiliation. Who changed the locks? Why did no one tell me anything? I went back into the house, trembling with fury. I found Sonia in the living room, laughing with some women. Sonia, I said, trying not to explode, why were the locks changed? My parents were outside, freezing. She looked at me with a cold smile. For security, dear. This house is valuable. We can't take any risks. Besides, are your parents okay? It's not that big of a deal. Those words disgusted me. I glanced at Felipe, who was nearby, but he avoided my gaze. That's when I knew something was very wrong. It wasn't just the party, it was something bigger, something planned behind my back. I didn't want to make a scene in front of the guests. I took my parents to a nearby hotel, making sure they were comfortable. I promised them that everything would be sorted out, but as I drove back, my head was a whirlwind. How dare they? How could Felipe allow this? And most importantly, what else were they hiding from me? When I got back to the house, the party was still in full swing. The music was thumping, laughter filled the air, and Sonia and Raoul were at the center of it all, acting like they owned the place. I stood in the doorway, watching the scene, feeling like my life had turned into something I didn't recognize. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream, but I knew it wasn't the right time. If I was going to do something, I had to be smart. I couldn't let my emotions control me. Not now. I slipped into the kitchen, where I knew no one would bother me. I took out my phone and called Carla, my lawyer friend. She answered on the second ring, as if she knew something was wrong. I told her everything, the changed locks, my parents shivering in the cold, Sonia's attitude, Felipe's evasiveness. "Diana, this doesn't sound good," she said in a serious voice. "We need to check everything, the house, the accounts, the contracts. If they're changing locks behind your back, who knows what else they're doing." She promised we would start investigating the next day. Then I called Marcos, a friend who works in real estate. I asked him to find out who changed the locks and why. "Give me a couple of hours," he said. "This smells like trouble." With those 2 calls, I felt I at least had a starting point, but the rage was still burning inside me. I went back to the living room, faking a smile to avoid raising suspicion. Sonia saw me and approached with her queen-like demeanor. "Diana, where have you been?" "The party is a success," she said, as if I should be thanking her. I nodded, clenching my teeth, and muttered something about getting more ice. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. The party ended around 2 in the morning. The guests left, the waiters cleaned up, and the house fell into a strange silence. Felipe was on the sofa with a beer in his hand, looking at his phone. Sonia and Raoul had gone to a hotel, supposedly to give us space. I didn't believe them for a second. I sat down across from Felipe, crossing my arms. "We need to talk," I said bluntly. He looked up, and for a second, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes, but he quickly composed himself. "What's wrong, Diana? The party went well, didn't it?" I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled. "My parents were outside, Felipe, freezing. The locks were changed, and nobody told me anything." "Did you know about this?" He shifted in his seat, looking away. "It wasn't a big deal, honey. Mom thought it was better to change the locks for security. We didn't want to worry you." "Worry me?" I repeated, raising my voice. "My parents, who are in their 70s, one just had heart surgery and the other has arthritis, were shivering on the doorstep of my house, and you say it's not a big deal." Felipe opened his mouth but said nothing, just looked down. In that moment, I knew I couldn't trust him. Not completely. Not until I understood what was happening. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the study, reviewing papers for the house. I found the purchase contract, the payment receipts, everything seemed in order, but something didn't add up. There was a receipt from a security company I didn't recognize, dated a week earlier. Who had paid for it? With what money? My mind wouldn't stop racing. The next morning, Carla arrived with a coffee in her hand and a folder under her arm. "Let's start with the basics," she said. We went to the bank together. When we reviewed the joint accounts I had with Felipe, my heart sank to the floor. A huge amount of our savings had been withdrawn, more than half of what we had saved for the house and our future. There was no authorization with my signature. "This is fraud," Carla said with a calmness that scared me. "We need to freeze the accounts right now." I called the bank and put an alert on the account so no more transactions could be made without my approval. Then I spoke with Marcos, who already had information about the locks. "They were changed by a company hired by Raul," he said. "And that's not all. I found out your in-laws have been talking to a contractor about making improvements to the house. They said it was a gift for you, but the budget is sky high, and it looks like they're paying for it with your money." I couldn't believe it. Not only had they taken over the party, but they were planning to change my house, my life, without even consulting me. And Felipe, how deep was he in this? I felt betrayed, but I refused to break down. Not yet. That afternoon, I hired a locksmith to change the locks again, this time in my name. I didn't tell Felipe. When he came home and saw the locksmith working, he turned pale. "What are you doing, Diana?" he asked. "Protecting what's mine," I replied without looking at him. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. "I don't want excuses. I want the truth. What is going on with your parents? What do they know that I don't?" Felipe stammered something about his parents just wanting to help us have a better house. He said Sonia had convinced Raul that we needed a complete renovation, that the house wasn't up to their family standards. Up to their standards? I repeated, incredulous. And who are they to decide what my house should be like? Felipe had no answer. For the first time, I saw him hesitate, as if he were beginning to realize what his parents had done. Carla helped me draft a formal letter to Sonia and Raul, demanding an explanation for the withdrawn money and the unauthorized improvements. I also warned them not to return to the house without my permission. It wasn't easy. Sonia called me that same night, furious. "How dare you treat us like this," she screamed. "Everything we did was for you." I hung up the phone. I wasn't going to fall for her games. The next few days were a whirlwind. I hired a lawyer specializing in real estate to review everything related to the house. We discovered that Sonia and Raul had tried to register a portion of the property in their name, using a power of attorney that Felipe had given them without telling me. That was the last straw. I confronted Felipe that night with all the documents on the table. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" I yelled. He collapsed, crying, saying his parents had convinced him it was for the best, for our future. "I didn't want you to get angry," he said. But it was too late. The trust was broken. I spoke with my parents and told them everything. They were devastated, not just because of what happened at the party, but because they felt they had lost Felipe, whom they loved like a son. "Whatever you do, we'll be with you," my mother said. Those words gave me strength. I decided I was not only going to get my house back, but I was going to put a stop to Sonia and Raul once and for all. With the help of Carla and the lawyer, we started building a case. We froze the accounts, reversed the changes to the property, and demanded the return of the money. But it wasn't enough. I wanted Sonia and Raul to understand that they couldn't play with my life. I started investigating their past. Marcos helped me contact an old friend of his who knew Raul from his business days. What he told me left me speechless. Sonia and Raul had a history of manipulating people to get their way. They had done similar things with other family members, always playing the victim when confronted. With each passing day, I felt stronger, but also more alone. Felipe tried to apologize, but I couldn't look at him the same way. How could I trust someone who let his parents humiliate me like that? My parents, meanwhile, moved into an apartment near my house temporarily to be closer to me. Seeing them, knowing they were safe, gave me the strength to keep going. But it wasn't over yet. I knew Sonia and Raul wouldn't give up so easily. They had money, connections, and an ego the size of a stadium. If I wanted to beat them, I had to be smarter. And I was ready for whatever came next. The following days were crazy. Carla, my lawyer friend, became my main ally. We spent hours reviewing documents, talking to the bank, and making sure Sonia and Raoul couldn't make a move without us knowing. Marcos, my real estate friend, kept digging. Every day he came up with something new, strange invoices, half-signed contracts, even rumors that Raoul had tried to convince a neighbor to sell part of our land for a real estate project. Everything pointed to a much bigger plan than I had imagined. Meanwhile, Felipe was in a strange limbo. He tried to talk to me, but I wasn't ready. Every time I saw him, I remembered my parents shivering at the door, and his silence that night hurt like a knife. He stayed in the house but slept on the sofa. I didn't have the energy to fight with him. My priority was protecting my house and my parents. One morning, while having coffee with Carla, Marcos called me. "Diana, you have to see this," he said in a tone that put me on edge. He sent me some documents he had obtained from a contact at the municipality. Sonia and Raoul had applied for a permit to remodel our house, but it wasn't a simple renovation. They wanted to convert the second floor into a separate apartment to rent it out all without my consent, using the power of attorney Felipe had given them. Worst of all, they had paid the initial fees with our money. I was speechless. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was blatant theft. I called my lawyer and asked him to prepare a lawsuit for fraud and breach of trust. "This is serious, Diana," he said. "We can get the money back and make sure they never bother you again." But I didn't just want the money. I wanted Sonia and Raoul to feel the consequences, not just in their bank account, but in their pride. That night, I sat Felipe down in the living room. I put the documents on the table and told him everything, the missing money, the remodeling plans, the power of attorney he gave his parents. "Did you know any of this?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. He covered his face with his hands. "I didn't know everything," he said, his voice trembling. "Mom told me it was to improve the house, that it would be a surprise." I trusted them. For the first time, I saw him vulnerable, but it wasn't enough. "You trusted them more than you trusted me?" I asked. He didn't answer, and that hurt more than any words could. I told him I needed time, that I couldn't go on as if nothing had happened. He nodded with tears in his eyes and promised to help me fix things. I didn't know if I could believe him, but at least it was a start. With Carla and the lawyer, we moved forward. We froze the permits Sonia and Raoul had initiated. The bank helped us trace the money, and we discovered that a large portion had gone into an account in Raoul's name. We filed a criminal complaint for embezzlement. I knew the process would be long, but I felt stronger with every step. It wasn't just about the money, it was for my parents, for the humiliation, for the betrayal. A few days later, Sonia called me. Her tone was no longer that of a queen in control. She was furious, but also nervous. "Diana, this has gone too far," she said. "We're family. You can't do this to us." I laughed. Family? Family doesn't leave my parents freezing on my doorstep. Family doesn't steal my money or try to sell my home. I hung up before she could respond. The final blow came thanks to Marcos. He discovered that Sonia and Raoul had done something similar to Felipe's sister, Laura, years ago. They had convinced Laura to sell a family property, promising they would invest the money in a business that never existed. Laura had cut off contact with them after that. I reached out to her, and although she was reserved at first, she ended up telling me everything. "They are expert manipulators," she said. "They always get their way, but if you confront them with proof, they crumble." With Laura's help, we got more evidence. Sonia and Raoul had taken out loans in our house's name using Felipe's power of attorney. We presented everything to the judge and managed to get their accounts frozen until the case was resolved. For the first time, I saw Sonia and Raoul lose control. They tried to contact me, but I didn't answer. They also talked to Felipe, but he, to my surprise, stood firm. "I'm not going to let you keep ruining our lives," he told me one night. I didn't know if I could trust him, but at least he was starting to wake up. While all this was happening, I made sure my parents were okay. I visited them in the apartment where they were staying. We spent a quiet afternoon together, something we hadn't done in months. My father, who already looked stronger, took my hand. "Honey, the only thing we want is for you to be happy. Don't let anyone take what's yours." My mother nodded with tears in her eyes. That afternoon gave me the strength to continue. The legal process moved forward, but not without challenges. Sonia and Raoul hired an expensive lawyer, but the evidence was clear. The judge ordered the return of the money they had taken, and although we didn't have it yet, it was a huge step. We annulled the power of attorney Felipe had given them, and the house was back in our names. I changed the locks for a third time, just to be safe, and put cameras at the entrance. I wasn't taking any more chances. The hardest part was deciding what to do about Felipe. Part of me wanted to hate him, but another part saw that he was trying to change. We started couples therapy, something I never imagined doing. In the sessions, he admitted that he had always let his parents control him. "I didn't know how to say no to them," he said once, his voice breaking. I was still hurt, but I saw his effort. We agreed to give ourselves time, set clear boundaries with his family, and work on our trust. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Sonia and Raoul were left with little to say. Their friends, the ones from the party, started to distance themselves as rumors of their behavior spread. Laura told me that several business partners had cut ties with them. Their facade of a perfect family crumbled. And although they wouldn't admit it, I know that hit them hard. I wasn't seeking revenge, but I felt a certain satisfaction knowing they couldn't manipulate anyone else. A month later, I organized a small gathering at home, the way I always wanted: homemade food, soft music. My parents were at the center of the table, laughing and telling stories. My friends were there, and Felipe joined, although there was still tension between us. As I watched my parents looking happy, I realized I had regained something more important than the house or the money: my voice. I learned to set boundaries, to protect those I love, and to never let anyone make me feel small. I don't know what will happen with Felipe and me. Some nights, I feel like we can rebuild what we had; others, I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust him completely. But I know I will never again let anyone take control of my life. Sonia and Raoul thought they could play with me, but in the end, I was the one who changed the rules. Their world fell apart, and mine, though still healing, is stronger than ever.